Now this Melodeon is called Diatonic, and if you don't know what that means, I'll try and explain it to you. So basically, if you play a piano, and you play your piano from the left side to the right side, from the bass to the treble, and you play every single note, that's called chromatic, and you literally have got every single note that there is in music. Not so with the diatonic instrument, but basically for each row you've only got the notes that are relevant to that key. So if I play this row, okay, just ignore this first button, I'll come back to that, and I push in. Okay, I'm going to miss that one because I've had that tune specially, but basically on the push you've got only the notes that you'll find in the major chord of G. So they're either G, B or D. G, B, D. Okay? And when you pull, you've got the other notes that aren't in the major chord. So basically, in any one row on a diatonic Melodeon, you've only got notes that you find in that scale. So the only notes you'll find in this scale are notes that you find in G major. And with this row, only notes on the push, they're all the notes in the major chord, the first, third and the fifth, which in D of course is D, F sharp and A, D, F sharp and A, and on the pull it's all the other notes in the scale. Okay, so that's what diatonic means. It means notes that you only find in that major scale. In other words, not every single note that there is in music. And that's got its uses and sometimes it's got its drawbacks. But we'll talk about that a bit later on. I will just say the chin end of the Melodeon, which we often call this the chin end, these notes here are not part of that diatonic scale. They're little, you'll hear there. They're kind of completely out of kilter with the rest of the row, and they're called accidentals, and they're quite handy if you want to add in little notes that you wouldn't normally find in that key. And the chin end note, both rows, gives me two accidentals, and they are quite useful. And as I've had this note up here tuned differently as well for a specific tune that I was playing. And it is worth mentioning, if you know someone who's really good at tuning Melodeons, I'm lucky enough to know someone who does, you know, you can have your Melodeon tuned differently, but I would recommend first of all not trying to do it yourself, because it's a complete nightmare. Definitely a job that is best left to an expert, because it is very, very fiddly. It's not something you can do, and I wouldn't mess around until you actually know what you want. In other words, get yourself a DG Melodeon and leave it like that. When you buy a Melodeon, you have a choice with the chin end note or notes, or whether you want extra notes in the diatonic scale or you want accidentals. Mainly I think they come with accidentals. Certainly my two Melodeons have accidentals. But this is what's known as a third button start, because the third button down in this row is a G and it's D there. So remember D, G, they're your root notes, your tonics if you like, in the two keys. So that's what it means by diatonic. Let's talk about the bass side now and how it relates to the treble side, or the left hand. As I said, the hand is trapped behind this strap, because not only does this hand play the bass notes, it also is used to pull and push the bellows, push the bellows in and out. So, you know, it needs to be held fairly rigid, and you need to adjust that strap, and again that will be in a later video probably. Like I said, you've got 8 buttons, and they are all kind of related to the right hand. Now, we've talked about the two keys, D and G. Let's take the key of G. Obviously, if you are like me and you're a guitarist, you think very much in terms of chords and the dreaded 3-chord trick. And in the key of G, the 3-chord trick, I'm sure you know, is G, C and D. So a simple song will be using those 3 chords, the G and the C and the D. The chords built on the 1st, the 4th and the 5th degrees of the scale. So you want chords to go with that, pretty obviously. So here, these 2 buttons nearest the floor on this side, if if I push in, I've got a G root note and a G major chord. So that's my sort of first chord of my 3-chord trick. And over here on the inside row at the bottom 2, I've got a C bass and a C chord. And what is quite handy is that I've got that, you may have noticed, you may have heard me say earlier, that's the same, that's unisonoric, okay, on the in and the out. And you're getting that typical umpire kind of sound. Don't let that worry you. You might hear umpire and think, I've got to play German music. Not so at all, but you know, that's just a way of explaining how it sounds. So I've got 2 of my 3 chords, G, C, and this is where this bisonoric thing works really well. Come back to the 2 buttons that are giving me G, remember G on the push, if I pull them out, that's a D. So there's my 3-chord trick, G, C, D, and back to G. So you might want to make your 3-chord trick a 4-chord trick, and you can do that by adding E minor, which is the relative minor of G. So you've got G. Now if I pull out and play these 2 buttons up here, I've got an E root note and an E minor chord. So I've got G, E minor, C, D. So I've got 4 chords that are going to be very useful when I'm playing in the key of G. Similarly, if I'm playing in the key of D using this outer row, I've already shown you where you can find D. You can actually find D here on the pull, these 2, and also on the push, on these 2 buttons up here. So you get 2 lots of Ds on this D, G Melodeon, D here. Okay, now the 3-chord trick in D is D and G and A, and obviously you notice that 2 of the chords are the same for both the keys, aren't they? You get a D and a G in both those keys. So we've got D, so you go the other way, you can pull out and get D and G, and the A is these 2 buttons pulled out. And you want the relative minor, well you remember when you played the E minor, these 2 pulling out, push them in, and you've got B minor. So you can have D, B minor, G, and A. So in other words, the way it's set up is quite clever, isn't it? And this is where this bisonoric thing works really well. With just these 8 buttons, you've got all the chords you need to play 3 or 4 chord tricks in the 2 keys that you're provided with. So that's pretty useful, very, very useful in fact. And obviously, if you get a Melodeon in a different key, all those are changed to go with it. One thing I should say, from the factory, a lot of these Melodeons, remember I was saying B minor, that is set up as a B major, and it's very often a good idea to have that retuned to B minor, because B major is pretty useless for what you want to play. It's very often best to get that 3rd pair of reeds tuned so that you can have a B minor. So with a B major you'd have a D sharp in the middle and you want a D, okay? If you know your B minor chord is B, D and F sharp, so you'd want those reeds tuned to D. But any Melodeon restorer tuner would know exactly what you want. If you buy a second-hand one, it'll probably already have been done for you.